My name's Sherene Asnasyous and I'm with the IMARC team, and I'd like to welcome you all to IMARC METS Arena Live. This is our first episode, one of 6 planned for 2020. This series, which will take place monthly, is in partnership with Global Victoria and the resources team at the Department of Jobs, Precinct and Region as part of the Victorian Government. We thank them for their support for the series and obviously welcome the Victorian Government team, specifically on this call, Cameron Can from the Geological Survey of Victoria. We also welcome and thank Mining Plus, Ben Auld, who is on the call here with us today, whom are the technical partners of the series, and Ben will take a very important part of doing the question and answers with the METS companies that are involved in today's episode. IMARC, as many of you know, is founded in collaboration with AusIMM, AustMine, the Victorian Government and Mines and Money. IMARC will be taking place later on this year in Melbourne. In what formats and what dates and how, we're still in the development stage of all of that, but it's very exciting to be able to showcase IMARC later on this year, despite everything that's gone on in the early part of 2020. In the lead up, though, to IMARC and the METS Arena, the series being put together to engage and connect industry whilst obviously promoting METS capabilities of these pre-qualified METS companies that will be joining us. Today you'll see, as per the screen, Andrew Bailey from MinEx Consulting, Robbie Rowe from SensOre, Aaron Maher from Core Geosystems, Michelle Carey from IMDEX, as well as Liam Webb there from DataRock. Every episode that is coming up in this series will be on a different topic related to the mining value chain, which will have a miner or a contractor talking about a problem or opportunity, followed on by 5 METS companies that have been selected between the Victorian Government, Mining Plus and our founding partners to be part of the episode. We do obviously would love to see more METS companies involved, so if you are interested in applying, please let us know, or otherwise if you're a mining company with a particular problem or opportunity, we'd be interested in hearing from you also. Today's episode, like all our episodes, is interactive, so hence why everyone's face is here on the screen. I can see a high five there from Nick from Mining Plus, which is great. But if you have the opportunity to write a question to us in the chat room after each of the presenters, we'd be happy to take that question, unmute you, and you can actually ask that question to any one of the speakers a little bit later on. We do want you to get involved in this episode. Without taking too much more time, I'd actually like to welcome our first speaker, Cameron Can, who will talk on behalf of the Victorian Government team, specifically the Resources team and the Geological Survey of Victoria. Thanks, Cameron.
Thanks, Sherene. It's great to be part of this first METS Arena focused on mineral exploration and joining everyone from here in Melbourne, which is the home of IMARC. I'm really looking forward to hearing from some very talented individuals and organisations today who are delivering innovative and clever solutions for mineral exploration, in particular providing efficiency and value-add opportunities for drilling, which is arguably the most time-consuming and expensive component of the mineral exploration process, but as we all know, essential to discovery and delineation of resources and reserves. I actually find myself in quite a unique position, having spent most of my career in exploration and mining, but now in my role as Manager of Minerals Geoscience at the Geological Survey of Victoria, collaborating with clever and knowledgeable colleagues and geological surveys across Australia to acquire modern, high-quality, pre-competitive geoscience data and generate new knowledge, in particular for industry. So this includes the re-emergence of stratigraphic drilling by Australian Geological Surveys and Geoscience Australia as part of applied geoscience research programs, and within that trialling new drilling technology through entities such as MinEx CRC, who we'll hear from later, and before that the Deep Exploration Technology CRC, again supporting industry, including the exploration-focused METS. While post-mineral cover is a fundamental consideration, especially here in Australia, and joining us in the arena is Robbie Rowe, who spearheaded the IMARC Uncover Roadmap, which is an incredible and highly valuable body of work that many of the geological surveys and research organisations are using to guide their programs. There are opportunities to identify new search spaces by investing in science and technology during exploration, and that ranges from greenfields target generation through to the near mine environment. And it's another reason why I'm really interested to hear from some of today's presenters. So innovation comes in many forms, and this has been on show with regional Victorian drilling companies such as Deep Core Drilling in Bendigo, developing an award-nominated, locally designed and manufactured mobile acoustic shed to address sound and visual amenity in the landscape during exploration drilling, and Tightline Drilling near Ballarat, who have developed a robotic solution for hands-free drill rig and rod handling to improve operator safety. So the Victorian Government's METS Accelerator program, as part of its current mineral strategy, will identify and support regional Victorian businesses get involved in the mining value supply chain, domestically and internationally. And if you're interested in opportunities that this may present and the expertise along with that, I'd suggest you look into this program. In finishing up, I just really wanted to touch quickly on the Victorian Drill Core Library, which contains more than 18,000 drill holes, or almost 2 million drill meters. And it's all free to access, and for most part, applying new sampling and technology. So all the Australian geological surveys have an equivalent of this facility, as do some international jurisdictions. However, along with a significant endowment of legacy digital data, which is at various levels of accessibility, they are really an underutilised and undervalued resource. And it's probably where some of tomorrow's discoveries could be made, especially utilising some of the known and emerging technologies that we're about to hear about today. So on that, I'll hand back to you and look forward to the rest of the session.
Excellent, Cameron. Thank you. We'll hear from you a little bit later on when the METS companies have spoken. The next person I'd like to introduce and am very excited to have on board for the first episode is our first miner / explorer, Bruce Kendall from Chalice. So Bruce, if you'd like to, I guess, present the attendees and the METS companies with your specific update and challenge or opportunity, we'd love to hear it. Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Sherene. So for those of you who don't know, Chalice is an ASX-listed exploration company. We have two sort of key projects at the moment. One's called Geological, which is a regional recent discovery in WA, and the other one is Pyramid Hill, which until recently has been our main focus. So Pyramid Hill we've got about 5,000 square k's of tenure to the north and northwest of Bendigo. And it's essentially all covered by Murray Basin cover. And we're looking for the sort of Fosterville, Bendigo style mineralisation, so narrow vein mineralisation, high grade, but difficult to find. And then you compound that by putting it Murray Basin cover on top. So conventional exploration techniques such as soil geochemistry and geophysics either don't work at all or have limited reliability. So the major challenge for us is how do we find these narrow vein deposits, which, as Fosterville has recently shown, can be immensely profitable. How do we find these under cover? And I think everyone's starting to realise that if you want to make a discovery these days, you have to go places where people haven't gone before, and one of the obvious places to go is where there's cover obscuring the underlying prospective units. So we've tried sort of a few things, and to a lot of them to limited success. So we've tried soil geochemistry, and that works sometimes but doesn't in others. We've tried 2D seismic. 3D seismic for an exploration project would just be prohibitively expensive, and although it might be very useful, it just would be out of reach of almost all explorers. We've tried passive seismic, and I said all to some degrees of limiting success. So we need to try and determine obviously how deep the cover is, and so the places can prospective units under shallow cover will be targeted prior to those under deep cover. To date, we've taken a fairly typical sort of Western Australian exploration approach, which is to use an air core rig to do geochemistry, take a sample from the bedrock. Now, it's been very successful. We've managed to identify quite a large anomaly at Pyramid Hill, which we call Carey. We're getting mineralisation sort of over 4K strike length. But the difficulty for us now is where do we focus in on that, and how do we go and find the next one? And can we do it more cheaply? You know, that some cases the Murray Basin is up to 100 metres deep, and we don't know how deep it is until we put a drill hole in. So if we can identify the areas that are shallow early, then that's obviously a bonus for us. So there are two, I guess, as I see it, we see two broad problems, not just in Victoria, but generally globally really, is how do we target sort of regions and where to focus in regions where there's been little historical work, and that's either because it's an area that was considered unprospective or there is historical cover. And the depth, we don't know where the prospective units are and how deep the cover is. So that's a more broad regional targeting approach, and where in the state or the globe do we go to find these areas. And then once we've identified those areas, we want to be able to rapidly identify targets within them. And can we do that without having to do lots of reconnaissance aircore drilling, which, although relatively cheap, it starts to add up over time, and it becomes a very expensive exercise if you're drilling thousands and thousands of aircore holes a year without much success. So, you know, companies will lose enthusiasm for doing that sort of work if they don't get success relatively early. So if we can get some success early in the process, then that obviously allows you to target the drilling much more effectively. So I guess from our point of view, they're the two main challenges. There's two. Regional one, how do we target regional areas that haven't been looked at before in a cost-effective manner? And then once we've got those areas, how do we identify the individual targets without doing lots and lots of aircore drilling?
Excellent. Thank you, Bruce. You know, there was a reason that we wanted some miners to come on board, and it was to present their sort of particular problem and challenge in a very succinct way. So I think that was definitely presented there by Bruce, and he's outlined specifically some of those things. I'm going to hand over to, I guess, our first presenter, whom is Robbie Rowe from SensOre. But in the meantime, what everyone will see is that Robbie will present his side of what they are doing, but then he will be questioned by Ben from Mining Plus on some of the things that Bruce specifically brought up, but also about the challenge in general. So, Robbie, do you want to kick off at this point?
Yeah, thanks. And Elaine, you can probably bring up the first slide. This is really, SensOre is really addressing Bruce's first question, which is, you know, where do we look? How do we target better? Not so much on drilling itself, but how do we target better? So if we can just bring up the first slide, Elaine, it's just put it in PowerPoint mode. That's it. Great. Thanks very much. Okay, so we'll just go through this. We're applying an approach that will disrupt modern conventional mineral exploration through the application of computer-assisted AI and machine learning. I think we all understand that over the last 80 years, conventional targeting, or modern exploration as it's called, is a process of methodical area reduction. Unfortunately, this conventional workflow is biased in terms of the data that we use, in other words, what we like, what we have, what we can afford, and the qualitative interpretive steps applied by geoscientists at each of those scale reduction steps. And as an industry, we've been acquiring huge volumes of data, and many of us don't really use it. We only use a fraction of what we collect. The application of specialized machine learning tools and statistical methods using high-end computers on large data cubes removes this human bias in a quantitative data-driven approach. This augmented human-machine approach allows us to use more of the data, moving from regional scale to drill targets in a single step. The output drill targets that are generated with econometric variables that allow quantitative filtering and ranking of targets before drill testing. And in summary, and specific to today, about drilling, the application of machine learning will potentially result in fewer targets to be tested, fewer drill holes, lower discovery costs, smaller environmental footprints, that's just in terms of environment, land and physical footprints, and as a consequence, to increase exploration performance. So just go on to the next slide, please. So this shows graphically what SensOre's discriminate predictive targeting DPT workflow involves. So the first step is all about data. Acquisition, cleaning of data. In fact, cleaning represents about 75% of the time and cost investment in this process. Transforming the data, converting qualitative information to quantitative data, and application of feature engineering to regularize the grid and generate derivatives. Feature engineering and data imputation are processes routinely used in oil and gas, but not really used in exploration. We then train the data on what we want to find, for example, gold or nickel or copper, and involves the application of high quality training data to determine quantitative correlations between training points and individual layers. And our training points are deposits, resources, and occurrences. And then we move to prediction, using the training data And statistical inference is used to guide with machine learning algorithms to apply and then predict targets of similar signal or signature to the training set. And output predictions are where, the location, size or contained endowment, predicted footprint, predicted grade, and predicted depth. And then step 4 about value add. After some post-prediction analysis, does a target make sense? We move to capture the targets through acquisition. Last slide, please. At the heart of the DPT system is a multi-dimensional hypercube. For the data scientists out there, the cube's a grid of 400 by 400 meter samples with a multi-dimensional feature vector for each cell. The cell size that we use is 400 by 400 meters. The graphic shows the size of the data cube in the Yulgan that we're currently working on, 7.5 million cells, the 400 meter cells, 1,833 individual layers and upwards of 14 billion data points. And at the base shows the training data set for gold nickel, which is constantly being upgraded, is one of the most valuable data sets that we have. So to finish, and back to my first point, the application of artificial intelligence, machine learning will disrupt and ultimately replace model or conventional exploration. I know that's controversial, but I think it's going to happen in a way that it's impacted every other sector that machine learning and artificial intelligence have touched. And as a company, we aim to be at the forefront of industrializing discovery. Thanks. Fantastic.
Yeah, great overview, Robbie. It's a fascinating and very exciting sort of field of work that a lot of people do know about. And I think in your opening statement, you pretty much hit all the points on the problem statement that both Cameron and Bruce touched on. I suppose one thing that no doubt you get asked a lot is, are you aware of, the technology maturity curve? And where would you sort of place the development of SensOre sort of in that curve as it sits right now?
Yeah, well, in terms of the application of AI and machine learning to minerals exploration, I think that as a whole, and it's been going for a long time now, probably for at least 5 years, not here, but overseas, mostly in North America and Canada, I think they're in the trough of disillusionment, actually. And I think it promised a huge amount and to start off with, but it's been difficult to translate those predicted targets into discoveries. I think we're coming out the back end of that, and the reason I think that is because we're doing things that some of the companies that preceded us probably weren't doing, and we've done that by applying some of the techniques that are used in the oil and gas sector.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great. It's a really great position to be in. With your business in particular, to be right there while all the hype is gone, and you're ready for some real development. So I suppose, like I said, the point is it proven? Is it proven technology, and have you tested a prediction yet?
We're in the process of doing our first drill programs. They'll kick off in July. It has actually been tested because the first run of predictions happened in 2019. And fortunately, other people out there are making discoveries in gold. And so they're actually testing the targets for us. And a number of recent discoveries were actually predicted by us before they were made. So yes, it has been proven. And we'll prove it ourselves, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 months. And we've got a couple of joint ventures that we're going to start drilling in July.
Great. Well, good luck with those drill programs. When do you expect, like I said, you've had this prediction, when do you expect that it's going to be sort of relatively common knowledge that you're going to get repeatable results from these drill testing?
It depends on how quickly the industry as a whole adopts the process, really, and the technology. I think we've got a bit of a head start on our competitors, but we know that globally people catch up pretty quick. There are a lot of smart people out there, a lot smarter than we are, and so with a lot more resources. So it really depends on how quickly other people adopt this technology.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Great. And I mean, it's obviously, with your statement about the massive disruption, a very powerful tool. Do you expect in time that guidelines or legislation will change with respect to JORC reporting, for example, and corporate governance to carry, I suppose, the implications that this very powerful tool could have?
I think it will, but as an industry, we all know that we're quite conservative. So I think it's going to take quite a long time. It's just the same as how quickly or how slowly it's been for the industry to accept other methods of analysis, XRF instead of wet chemical methods, as an example. So I think it will, it'll take a long time. But as more people prove the technology and prove that it works, then slowly it'll be integrated into how people value their projects and their targets.
And we do have some questions from the audience, but with time, what I'm going to do is actually move on to the next speaker and then save these 2 or 3 questions for Robbie at the end, if that's okay.
Absolutely, of course. Thanks, Robbie.
Okay,
Thanks
fantastic.
very much.
Thank you so much, Robbie. Next, we have Liam from DataRock, and Liam is going to be presenting to us about his particular organisation. Thanks, Liam.
Thanks very much. Yeah, so I guess I'll be focusing on the other end of the questions, which is maximising the value we're getting from drilling, and how that we can use that to minimise minimise the amount we drill and get the bang for our buck, I guess. So I guess from day one of an exploration, sorry, I'll get the slides up, if that's okay.
Yeah, Elaine.
Awesome. Full screen. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess from day one of an exploration program through to mine closure, the information that's acquired by geoscientists in the core shed, that's fed into geological and geotechnical models, which are used for further exploration, mine planning, metallurgy and milling. Problem is that even if you get the 2 best geologists in the world logging the same core, they're going to give you different results. They'll focus on different things. They'll lump when someone else would split. They'll have different biases. My first job out of uni, like most geologists, was spent chained to a core shed for a few years, and I definitely wouldn't trust many of the decisions I made when I was 22, let alone any of my scientific interpretations. These error and inconsistencies we create at this stage, they propagate through the entire mining chain, having a direct financial impact. So with this in mind, we built the DataRock core platform. We wanted to help that 22-year-old me struggling away on the freezing west coast of Tassie. So DataRock Core is a scalable, cloud-based, AI-powered platform, which once set up for a client can generate geological data within 10 to 15 minutes for an entire drill hole. The idea is that by the time that geologist has taken the photos, had a coffee and is ready to log, that data is available to them, either as a guide or a validation. Additionally, an entire backlog can be processed through the platform in a matter of days. As long as the imagery is of reasonable quality, DataRock doesn't care where it's coming from or where it's going. Our aim is to plug into existing workflows with minimal disruption. Next slide, please. So DataRock Core works on dual core imagery, which has been obtained relatively consistently over the past few decades. Pretty much every exploration program or mine site takes a photo of its core and stores it somewhere, even if they don't always know where. This imagery can vary wildly in quality, metadata and consistency, and one of the biggest barriers in using it for analytics historically is the pre-processing involved. So before DataRock, the only way to do this was typically to use manpower and manual cropping. So we needed a workflow which can take these images and all their differences and convert them into a standardized depth registered strip ready for further analytics. And once we've done that, once the images have been through this pipeline, we can generate parameters such as RQD, fracture density and orientation, as well as carry out lithological classification, mineralization mapping, vein mapping. Basically, if you can do it manually from the photos, then it's likely it can be done automatically. So we've been working with a wide range of companies from tier 1 through to juniors, and everyone has specific problems. This is helping us develop our roadmap to suit our clients' needs and to produce data that has a direct impact. So far, we've processed approximately 1.5 million meters of core. We have 8 deep learning models in the production pipeline, 3 waiting for deployment and 4 in R&D to be rolled out this year. And like a geologist, I guess the more rocks that the platform sees, the better it gets. Over the next 12 months, we're hoping to increase our number of integrations with primary image sources, work with our clients to improve our user experience and validation capabilities, as well as add the capacity for televiewer and other image types into the platform. So I guess to wrap up, drilling is the most, sorry, next slide. I should be on the last slide. Just to wrap up, yeah, drilling is the most important source for understanding and finding and mining ore bodies. And so what we do at DataRock is allow for the rapid and consistent extraction of geological and geotechnical information at a scale, resolution and cost not previously possible. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent, Liam. Thank you. Good overview. I think you're being a bit honest that you didn't make the right decisions as a 22-year-old in the core yard. I suppose the one point, I didn't have a question around this, but that's a rite of passage really for every geologist. So your technology removes that. What is it that a young geologist looking to break into that part of the industry would look to do next with your technology?
That's a good question. I don't think we're trying to replace geologists. Definitely, I think what we want to do is add that kind of validation layer. Either while the geologist is logging, or maybe by the time it gets back to the resource geologist, just as a little bit of extra information, or a flag, if you like. We have we don't think we're going to be replacing geologists anytime soon. We're just looking to help them and add some consistency and validity to the data that's being created. And quite often, these logs that are created might not be seen again for another 5 or 10 years. So, depending. So, do it at the time. And
yep. Excellent. No, good point. How quickly has the technology been taken up? Obviously, conventional sort of photography process is there, and you're competing against that. So, can you give us a bit of insight to how you're sort of getting through that, I suppose?
So I guess there's two things driving kind of the technological advances in this area. First of all, people are taking better photos. There's a whole heap of image scanning and higher end equipment that's been taken up by clients. I think they're realizing the value in imagery, which might not have been there 5 or 10 years ago. And on the tech side, like these sort of deep learning image analysis models, the first one the paper was only written in 2012. So it's very, very early days still on the scale of tech. And our first DataRock's only a year old, and we've had to upgrade our segmentation model already once, and we got a 4 times improvement in inference speed and improvement in quality. So it's an exciting time to be in the area that we are. I guess with people uptake, I think we're getting a lot of interest in uptake. I think people are realizing that it's a fairly low risk, low cost add to the process. And as I said, we're trying not to disrupt any workflows or make people change the equipment they have. It's been pretty positive so far.
Yeah, good points. Yeah. As for the problem statement, how does it? You touched on it at the very end in your last slide, I think. But how does it transform that sort of rapid discovery of resources of the future? How do you think it will be embedded in that value chain?
Yeah, I guess the way we see it is that if you're acquiring good and consistent data from the first drill hole when you start a program, and that data is consistent across multiple programs, multiple geologists, I think you just give yourself the best shot. You're extracting the most value from your drilling. You may potentially have to drill less holes, and you're removing the biases that that blind us all. So we're definitely at the drilling, that end of the spectrum, I guess, when it comes to exploration. But I think if you get maximizing the value you're getting out of your drilling, then you're doing okay.
Yeah, excellent.
All right. If that's okay, what we might do, Ben, and is move on to the next speaker. But unless there's another question from you at all, or
I have another one, but we can leave it to the end. But no, good work, Liam. Thank
Excellent.
you. Yep.
Thanks, Liam.
Thanks, Ben.
Our next speaker is from Core Geosystems. Let me just unmute him here. It's Aaron. Oh, slight technical difficulty in unmute. Elaine, can you maybe help me unmute Aaron so he can present? There, lag in the system. Sorry about that. There you are, Aaron.
That it? Hello, can you hear me?
There you are. Yeah.
Good. Fantastic. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present. If you can just bring up my first slide. For those that don't know me, my name's Aaron Maher. I'm the Managing Director of Core Geosystems in Australia. So for today's session, I just thought I'd provide a quick overview of our solution and also round up with the case study we've just put together that shows the benefits of Spectre. When we started the company, we surveyed geologists, we went to core shacks all over the world to understand really the burning issues that they faced. And we soon learned that a huge amount of time was being spent on data entry and data management. So we set about developing a solution to address those issues and to really make core logging at its heart more efficient. Next slide. Sorry. Slide behind. Next one. Thank you. So our solution is called Spectre. It's made up of three elements: Spectre optics, which is our instrumentation. So this is an instrument that takes high resolution calibrated images, so no distortion, no light reflections on wet core. It's intuitive to use with a touch interface. It takes 2 hours to set up on site. All you need is power and internet, and you're up and running. And it's extremely fast. So for a production environment, it can image up to 1,500 meters of core per day. It can take wet or dry images, and you can actually wet the core in the instrument itself. And it takes any core tray size, any core tray material, so metal, plastic or wood or cardboard. So really the main reason we developed this instrument is because we also realized that 70% of the time when we process the images is cleaning them. So with this system, you don't need to clean up that data. It comes out pristine in the format you need it to be in. The second element of our solution is called Specter Geode. So this is our core logging software. It's a native Windows app that runs on your PC. Allows the user to log directly on the core images themselves. So it allows for manual logging in the traditional sense, logging on the core, but it has a number of automated features as well, which we use artificial intelligence to automate those features. And that includes automated depth referencing, lithology, QD. It can detect depth markers. It can identify rock or non-rock in your trays. And a number of other things, but the overall benefit of our automated features is that it speeds up logging and it provides that consistency over your team. The software also has a number of collaboration features which are becoming useful in these COVID-19 times. So you can share your images between team members within the software. You can share interpretations with each other in the software or via email. It's important to note too that while Specter Geo integrates seamlessly with Spectre optics, it actually is data agnostic. So if you can import structured or unstructured data into Geo. So if you have existing images, you can pull them all in and then log directly on those images as well. Next slide. So this is a case study that we've put together just recently. So this was looking at, I guess, the efficiency across a number of our clients, both in exploration and production projects. And on average, what we saw that for exploration projects that we created efficiencies around 44% in terms of the time it takes compared to the traditional method, which might take 22 minutes. We saw using our instrument and Geo, and this isn't including the automation, this is including artificial intelligence. This is just us removing the time, the inefficiency it takes to actually log, enter data into spreadsheets or into software. And in production projects, which there's less data entry typically, we saw a 29% improvement for our clients. So yeah, you can see quite a number of benefits, in terms of Spectre and how we really improve efficiency from the drill rig right through to logging and interpreting the core. I think that might be my time.
Excellent, Aaron. Yeah, thank you for that. So you won the Goldcorp, was Goldcorp $1 million Disrupt Mining Challenge last year, yes, and launched at IMARC last year. Obviously, with some pretty big plans, I suppose moving forward from that, and to make quite a large impact, I suppose, on the mining industry, and in particular to this problem statement today. So you spoke a little bit about speed there, but tell me, I suppose, what your original vision around making that impact and how you've gone to date and what you see in the future.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, our whole focus, our vision for the company was being the standard in core logging. And we really saw some benefits in terms of, the amount of time in the traditional core shed where people are, marking up the core manually, have a laptop, they'd walk across and they'd type in, to froms into the software. And then they take a picture, if they're lucky, they have a camera. If not, they have their cell phone, and they're storing and managing all this information. And we thought there has to be a better way to do this. And that's one of the main reasons that we created the Spectre suite of products, is to increase the efficiency, and that so people and geologists can focus on what they do best, which, and not on the mundane work, which is the data entry. So what we've seen now is we launched our product about 12 months ago at PDAC, and we did our first MVP of the product 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and we're really seeing quite a large uptake for, I guess, in terms of the whole industry, from tier 1s, tier 2s, right down to juniors. But certainly a lot of companies that are in the production mining space, where they want that fast throughput data at their fingertips instantaneously, that's where we're really seeing a huge uptake, certainly for the instrumentation side.
Okay, excellent. And I'd imagine that one of your biggest competitors is effectively the mindset of your would-be customers, that they're already doing this in a traditional way and incurring a cost for it. How do you plan to change that mindset? Like culturally, you're talking about disruption and making improvements and speed. How is it that your business goes around promoting that?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is everyone's recognizing that, using latest technologies and artificial intelligence to look at large data sets is the way the industry has to go. And at the moment, what we see is with traditional data sets, it takes quite a significant amount of time to prep them to be able to ingest them into, artificial intelligence algorithms. So I think people are seeing that in the industry, that they need to improve the ways they acquire data and how they manage that data to actually achieve those efficiencies. So I think over time, when we talk to people and show them how easy our system is to use and the benefits of it, it doesn't take much for them to kind of come around to seeing, why they should at least try it out and compare it against what they're currently doing.
Is there a trust factor there in all of a sudden having gone from looking at someone a professional looking at it and interpreting it, now into it's a beautiful looking piece of kit that you've got there, but ultimately into a black box, and then coming out with all that data at the fingertips?
Yeah, I think as Liam said, I mean, we're not here to replace the geologists. We're just really, the focus is removing the mundane tasks from their workload. So I don't think anyone likes taking pictures and entering data into spreadsheets or other systems and tools, and file naming images, and no one wants to do that. So I think if we can give more time back to the geology team, that's really our focus.
Yeah, spot on.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yep. Excellent.
Oh, thanks, Aaron. Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron. Next, we have Michelle from IMDEX. So, Michelle, if you'd like to carry on with your presentation, thank you.
Sure thing. So if we can just bring the slides up, that'd be great.
As they come up, just to let David, Giles, Nick from Mining Plus, Steve Sullivan, Mark Berry and Peter Clark know, we will be unmuting you soon to ask your questions.
Awesome, they're up now. So, hi everybody. At IMDEX, we like to talk about doing 3 things across the mining value chain. And of course, today, the one that I want to talk about is this concept of testing more targets. And really, there's 2 things that come out of that. One is around decreasing the cost of drilling so that you can drill as many meters as you can, but actually as important as this concept of only drilling the meters that you have to have an understanding of what's going on as quickly as possible so that you can stop drilling a hole at the soonest possible moment, and even better, that you can have enough information at hand to only drill 1 hole or 3 holes rather than 10. So, and those are really 2 of the concepts that I'm going to be talking about in a bit more detail. So if we can go on to the next slide. So at IMDEX, we have a very holistic view of how we go about this. This picture actually depicts what an ideal IMDEX drill site can look like right now, with all the different technologies that we can bring to play to move towards this concept of testing targets faster. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see there are a whole suite of technologies that are about what we call drilling optimization. And on the right-hand side, there's a whole suite of technologies that talk to what we call rock knowledge. So I'll go into those in a bit more detail in a moment, but just going back to drilling optimization, you can see here really what we're looking to do is to tackle the drilling process from end to end and really improve and optimize everywhere we can. That's everything from technologies we now have like Core Vibe, which speeds up diamond drilling. Extractor is an approach where you don't have to pull the rods anymore. So obviously there's a massive time saving in that. And then all the way down to using drilling fluids more effectively and monitoring those drill fluids in real time to make sure that you're using them effectively. And of course, all of those things together enable you to reduce the cost of drilling, which is usually the primary aim. But of course, there are some secondary things in here as well about potentially reducing the environmental footprint using something like an SRU. Maybe actually your biggest concern is making you're actually going to hit target in the first place, and so you focus more on that directional aspect. So that's really that drilling at the lowest possible cost piece, which is drilling optimization. But then there's this concept that we call rock knowledge, which for us is moving towards, and you've seen this from some of the previous speakers as well, is a much more sensor-driven approach to the way we start defining what a rock looks like and being able to do that in real time. Because really this idea of wanting to drill only the meters you have to drill, that links back to the idea that you know what's going on. You've got information at your fingertips as a geologist, so you can make a decision in real time to either not to keep drilling or to stop drilling. So if we just move on to the last slide. And this is really at the heart of what our rock knowledge approach is. It's this concept of sensor-driven information. So putting the sensor out on the drill site, either in the hands of the driller or the hands of the geologist, wrapping a QA workflow around it so you can trust that data, using the cloud, in our case IMDEX Hub IQ, to deliver that data. And then, as you've heard again from 3 of the speakers that have gone before me, starting to use AI approaches, in this case wavelet tessellation, so that rather than drowning geologists in data, we're actually starting to give them information which can feed into the core logging process, which can feed into the modelling process. Now, I am going to be a little bit contentious, and Robbie Rowe, I know you'll appreciate me saying this. I know we're all at pains to say we're not looking to replace geologists. I think when it comes to things like core logging, we are, and really this is the way that we move forward. Thank you.
Excellent, Michelle. Very bold, very good. You covered
Someone
a lot of.
Say it, then.
Yeah, you had to. No, good, good. You covered a lot of information there, very, very concisely and very simply. So that was really good to hear. It's clearly a very integrated business with a focus on innovation and technology. I'd be interested to know a little bit about how you introduce and establish a culture within your business to support that vision.
Yeah, it's actually a really important part of who we are, and a lot of it's about sustained investment in this area. IMDEX has been around for 20 years, and even though we're part of a cyclical industry, we've invested in R&D at, you know, $10 to $20 million type levels throughout, and we've made a series of acquisitions throughout as well. And so as a company, it means you never stand still, and it means that you're always looking for the next opportunity, for the next thing that we can put into the industry to change it forever. You know, one of our internal catch cries is, you know, change the industry forever. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I've got a few similar statements like that, yep, like that myself. But I suppose so. Through acquisition, you get to acquire those innovations, that culture as well. Tell me a little bit about sort of the young professionals that you will develop in line with this integrated approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important part as well. You know, I head up product within IMDEX, and product managers is a kind of an interesting area that we found is that, you know, traditionally within our industry, suppliers and service companies were a bit of a dirty word, but there's really this really quite exciting field now where you can be in technology, right? And as a geoscientist, you can move into the technology field and start to you know, look at problems that you've always tried to solve, but now have the means through technology to start solving them. So we've taken a lot of you know, really bright young geoscientists and engineers and given them that opportunity. It's pretty cool. Even drillers, actually, heaven forbid. There you go.
Oh, fantastic, yeah. And out of the whole integrated sort of value chain, what do you think in your product and service suite there has the biggest impact to our problem statement of that rapid, precise sort of exploration discovery?
Yeah, look, I think, particularly hearing that concept of how do you make sure that you're only drilling the meters you have to drill. So that real-time rock knowledge piece at the end, reducing the cost of drilling is critical because we are so drilling reliant, but step change, shift comes in us actually knowing and understanding our system quickly so you drill one hole rather than 10.
Yeah, excellent. Great overview, Cheryl. I think that's really good. Yeah. I think you'll have a few questions at the end, no doubt, in the Q&A.
Awesome, thanks.
So our last speaker by no means least is Andrew Bailey from MinEx. So Andrew's presentation, if we can pull that up, and Andrew, yeah.
Thanks, Sherene, and if Elaine, if you can get those slides up, then I must apologise. As I've started speaking, it's absolutely bucketing down outside here in Perth. So if the rain gets across that wall halfway across the country, you'll get some on that side of the country too. So this is mineral exploration in a collaborative way. So we're part of this mineral exploration cooperative research centre. So basically, we're looking at these problems or the questions posed from a researcher point of view. So we've got six plus CSRO research organisations, universities, doing what mining companies and exploration companies want done. So the problem statement from mining and exploration companies undertaken by researchers, but with METS companies of the likes of IMDEX and others involved, that they can ultimately commercialize it and as well as apply it across the country to the different, all the geological surveys of the states and territories. So that's what these cooperative research centres are about. And then those money and people put in by those organisations is leveraged with a substantial amount of federal funding in our case. So there's big leverage on anyone's research or ideas we pursue. So Elaine, if you can just go to the next slide. Then it comes down to basically, how do we solve some of those problems? And one of the methods in our 10 projects we tackling at the moment is coil tube drilling. So here you see an image of a coil tube rig, and to answer those basic questions that, for example, Chalice was talking about, well, safety. Any program gets absolutely canned if there's safety problems, and by having a coil, and you'll see that 2 metre or so, just over 2 metre coil up in the area, there's 500 metres of drill pipe wound around a coil. There's no rods to drop. There's much reduced rod handling. So we're applying a coil in a relatively small rig, and I'll show you in a moment a different picture of it, but effectively a 15-ton rig, so a relatively small footprint, much easier to move. You know, an RC rig with all the bells and whistles is upwards of 35 tons. This is a small rig, which results in a reduced footprint from both physically but energy usage. For example, coil tube rig uses probably 20% of the fuel compared to an RC rig with a booster. So that's hugely reduced footprint, and then efficiency gains come from that. So cost efficiency, as well as, of course, drilling efficiency. So without changing rods, getting into and out of a hole is quicker, drilling a hole is quicker. And so that speed of drilling with less people results in substantially reduced drilling costs. So that's what this coiled tube drilling is all about. And if you just go to the next slide, this is basically the 3D model of where we are at the moment. In the foreground, you see the coiled tube rig, relatively small, and to the right is this hydraulic processing unit, basically a standalone truck for recycling those fluids and gaining what is effectively not dissimilar to an RC type sample, chip sample in a mud solution that's then worked out for sample recovery. And using this combination of an efficient rig at this stage to 500 meters depth and with a 1,000-meter rig under design and construction at the moment, combined with things like downhole sensing, which one of our other projects, you know, in this coil, We have a copper wire for power, fiber optic cable, which enables steering and a whole lot of other sensing applications through fiber optics then, and then ultimately tied into 3D modeling so that your whole system is integrated and updated and on the fly can be utilized for the best information. I'll leave it at that, Ben, and go over to you.
Yeah, excellent, Andrew. Yeah. Fantastic. It's an intriguing rig for sure. We look forward to seeing it more and more. I suppose on that point specifically, the commercialisation is a big objective of this research and collaboration. How do you manage that those expectations, timing wise, and the risk associated with that as such?
So some of this intellectual property came out of the Deep Exploration Technology CRC, and they ran some significant field trials. And this rig went over to Nevada, did a great trial, and basically proved better drilling in those tricky Nevada sediments compared to conventional RC drilling. So, it does work. It's back in Adelaide now. We've got 2 rigs in Adelaide. They're being prepped up with that hydraulic processing, and it will be end of this year they're ready. So they hit the ground running in the National Drilling Initiative. So those in different states and territories in January next year, basically starting the trials in South Australia and moving across to WA. So technology readiness level up around 7 and 8 even, as opposed to some of our projects that start as low as 2, which is just the conceptual. But this is out there basically on the verge of commercialization and certainly in the trial phase.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, very good. And nice segue into the National Drilling Initiative. But I believe 50% of of that funding that you mentioned is spent on that NDI. So and ultimately, I suppose more collectively, what's the return on investment ultimately for the Australian people, our great industry, as a benefit as a whole, with this problem statement that Cameron brought up earlier?
So the concept is to stimulate further exploration and therefore discovery and ultimately mining in the country. So that's what we're all about. So the associated industries that go with it. So on a pure money for basis, our return on investment is close to 4 to 1, just over 3 to 1, I think, in our total submission with costs. But it's very hard to measure that ultimate benefit because of the 15-year time lag between discovery and mining. But this is going to do numerous things: speed that up ever so slightly, stimulate companies with spin-off technology that go out and build themselves, and ultimately stimulate the exploration and mining industry, both Australia-wide and globally, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. No, very clear response. Yeah.
What we might do now, thank you, Andrew, for your presentation, is we've got some questions from the audience, which we've now unmuted some of those people before we go back to Bruce, Cameron and Ben to talk about the METS companies. Let's start with a question from, I think, David Giles. You had a question or two for our speakers?
Yeah, thanks, Sherene. I had a question for you, Robbie. I really love that stuff, and I love the idea of taking the subjectivity out of how we analyse the data. And I guess I'm interested in when you step away from an area like the Yilgarn, where we've got such data density and loads of good data sets, how are we going to go into those areas where the data is more patchy and we don't have discoveries to train on? What do you think are the most important steps as we transition into those areas?
Yeah, good question. So there's two aspects. The first aspect is the whole aspect of data density and how you use data or infill data where you don't have it. And that's this big part of feature engineering and data imputation. And it is a bit controversial from the mineral sector, but it's routine in the oil and gas and other sectors. They generate data from the data that they do have. So a lot of people say, well, it's not going to work in areas of low data density, and in fact, it's not true at all. It works just as well in areas of lower data density as long as there's some that you can impute. And then the second bit is the training sets. That is a harder one, and the way to get over that, and the way we're looking at getting over that, is because mineral deposits all over the world have a signature, we can use global data for the training for specific correlations. There are local correlations that you have to, so for example, structural ones and ones that have orientation included, but the underlying signature in terms of geochemistry, even geophysics, you know, gradients, where they sit on gradients in terms of density, gravity, or magnetic, where they sit on those is pretty the same all over the world. So you can use other data sets from globally on a specific data cube that we've developed, for example, in the UGA. So it's about infilling data using feature engineering and using data from elsewhere and applying it even in the training data sets to where you are trying to predict where the deposits are.
Okay. Nick from Mining Plus, you had a question also for someone?
I did. It's for Robert, and in line with Bruce Kendall's question of uncovering a regional area, unlocking a regional area with cover or without cover, I will add to that. Would you be willing to work with universities? Because you said your cost or time is 75% admin of cleaning data. Would you work with universities to help speed up that process? Because it alleviates one problem for you, but also educates the youth coming through.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, the problem is that, of course, that the data cubes that we develop are proprietary, and if it goes to the university sector, who actually gets an opportunity to look at those? Internally, we actually are developing with a major research organisation in Australia the whole process of automating data cleaning. That has problems, but we're making huge progress on cleaning some very large data sets that are very problematic to extract. So we're making huge progress, and I think we're in the near future. I'm almost certain by the end of this year, beginning of next year, we're going to be able to apply some advanced machine learning algorithms to clean data. And some of the techniques in that are about, again, imputation. They're about statistically modeling the different data sets that we're using, and getting the machine to work out what are the thresholds. So we would be willing to work with other groups to assist, but in the end, you know, one of our biggest proprietary advantages is the data cube itself. And we've already been talking to potential clients and to major companies, and they're astounded by what we've done in such a short period of time.
Okay. Steve Sullivan, you've got a question?
Yeah, I was going to pick on Robert as well. So not that the other presenters weren't worthy. Just Robert, using machine learning, I imagine you come up with a lot of false positives. Just want some ideas on strategies on how to reduce those to something where you can, you know, you've got a handful of targets you can advise the company to explore for, rather than give them 100. And
yeah, so again, another good question. So the false positives is a feedback that we do feedback in. Once we've identified that they are a false positive. The problem is that I assume that most of the targets that we were going to generate on the analysis would actually turn out to be false positives. That hasn't actually been in the case. We've only returned a few false positives so far, and there actually aren't a huge number of targets that it generates. And the reason for that is because it predicts size, grade, and depth. Then very quickly you can filter out the ones that aren't economic. In other words, you can filter out the ones with too low grade, or they're too deep, or they're too small. And it actually does a good job at mapping out footprints of mineral systems. So very quickly you can discard the ones that don't look real in terms of mineral systems, that aren't large mineral systems. So it's about filtering. So out of the couple of thousand gradicules that it generated in terms of predicted targets, we're only looking at a small fraction of those moving forward, and they're the ones that we've either captured via peg and ground acquisitions, JVs, or we're approaching other companies. No secret that most of the really good targets are on major companies' ground, and we're working at a strategy on how we can get access to some of those.
Two more questions. We've got one from Peter Clark to two of our panelists.
Thanks, Sherene. So, yeah, my question is not to Robert. It's pretty much to all the other panelists, I guess. I'm just interested in the potential for linking the core logging software, which obviously gives you much better quality data, more complete data, being able to log, being able to link that to the data you're getting from your downhole instrumentation when you're drilling the holes. So it would seem to me that that would open up some enormous opportunities for, for understanding the data very much better. So just interested in whether there's any work in that area.
Yeah, I can certainly talk to that from a core perspective. So that's certainly something that we're doing at the moment in terms of incorporating other data sets into Specter Geode. So we're looking at everything from televiewer data to assay data. So any sort of data source, putting that into the system, whether that's manually entered or we can suck it out of another system, integrate to another database. That's certainly something we're looking at because a lot of our clients have asked for that, and it also helps us with some of our modelling as well.
I think the thing I'd add is that I think this is a space too where people like us need to be really collaborative. We're going to end up otherwise in a situation where we've all got our own pet sensors, and the solution that the industry is going to need is being able to use all of these data streams together, as you say, Peter, to really get the outcomes we want.
Yep. Yeah. So our focus has always been around open APIs. So sharing of data, we recognise that the data is the customer's data, it's not our data. So, we're working with a lot of industry partners to make sure that we can interface to their databases. So it's all open.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess my comment on that is that, image analytics, say the textual parameters that we're extracting from a photo, similar to how a geologist would do it with their eyes, they could easily be linked to the downhole sensors IMDEX are using and predict something like hardness. I don't know. So yeah, I agree, collaboration.
Okay, if it's okay, what we'd actually like to do is go back to Bruce. And Bruce, do you have any commentary about the 5 METS companies that you've heard today? And is there any particular one that perhaps stood out to you from a Chalice challenge problem or opportunity?
Yeah, look, I think they're all quite different in terms of answering different questions, all sort of fantastic to hear and things. I think from an early exploration stage like we are, I like some of those things are quite sort of down the exploration phase. I guess one of the challenges I see from a junior exploration is if you've got 3 drill holes on a project, can you afford to have a system come in just for those 3 holes? So I think from an early exploration phase, the stuff that Robbie talks about is very exciting, and being able to predict where you can go within areas is something that's I agree with Robbie. I think it's the way of the future. I also think that for advanced projects, the ability to have a system that you could put core in and really speed up the process of geological interpretation is fantastic. And I think there's a huge future for those where they can be done. And I agree with Michelle's comment. It's about if we can't integrate this and everyone is off doing their own thing, we're going to end up with multiple systems where no one can really get the full advantage of it all, because it's the real advantage is being able to integrate all these things together. So yeah, I think excellent talks. I think and I also think the core drilling is the ability to do that coil drilling is I've been watching it from afar. It'd be great to see that out in the industry. The one question I have is can you do angled holes, and if so, are there any issues with those? But I think fantastic.
Excellent. Ben, any commentary from you as from a technical perspective for either of the companies?
Yeah, probably not so much from the technical perspective. I think everybody covered it off very well. But I suppose I had another point for Bruce, but also Cameron. I would say throughout these presentations, what really struck a chord, from what you heard, in line with what the Victorian government in particular are hoping to achieve with exploring resources of the future. It would just be interesting to hear your commentary as well on the METS we've heard from.
Probably echo somewhat what Bruce just touched on. All fantastic applications, and it's high quality research that is a small but high quality representation of what's potentially out there in Australia, and it's about trying to bring that bring that together at different stages, the mining life cycle. So I think they've all got places to live, both in industry perspective, but also government. I think the gap between government, and when I say government, geological surveys, and industry is narrowed quite a lot, and not just in my limited time in the surveys, but thinking about back when I was a student and what surveys meant and what they did and the like. So yeah, more collaboration in that regard is only going to be good going forward.
Excellent, yeah. I think having heard the amazing things that these 5 Mets today are working on, we're in pretty good hands ultimately in Australia. But I'd be interested just to hear from anyone who would like to comment. How do you think we as an Australian Met stack up with our sort of global counterparts, and how are we integrating and collaborating with other, I suppose, technologies we're seeing globally as Mets companies? If anyone would like to.
From a big picture point of view, Canada, the Swedish or the Scandinavian people, even parts of Europe, they look at the way we collaborate on a big a cooperative research centre type point of view, and it's a great example. Nowhere else in the world, I don't think, has such cooperation. So big picture, Australia does it very well.
Yeah, excellent. Any other comments from anyone there, and specifically from their point of view?
I think Australia does very well in terms of innovating. I mean, Core is a Canadian headquartered company as well. So, looking at both the teams and the industries, I think, Canada and Australia certainly punch above their weight in terms of innovation and what we're doing. I can only see that continuing into the future.
Excellent. And I think Peter sort of was alluding to that point about integrating some of the very specific technologies that each of you are working on, and how that becomes the full value chain that the likes of a company like Bruce and Chalice sort of need at different points. And that probably comes to a point as well that I know everybody, these METS companies, Bruce probably would question, but how do the METS companies present their technologies and services to break into more mining companies? Because there's a massive barrier. We've got great ideas. These technologies need to be basically adopted and tested and refined. So I suppose, Bruce, that's for you. What you imagine that you'd like to see?
Sorry for me.
I mean, what is it that any one of these METS companies could do to reach out to you or similar to integrate and embed their technology?
Yeah, I guess it's the the targeting it specifically for the question that the client wants to answer, and that's that's going to vary from client to client, obviously. So for our example, an early exploration phase how would you pitch, say, the core scanning systems to us, so that we can say, yes, that's a value, that we can see the value in that, especially if I only have a limited number of holes. I've been involved in quite a few systems, viewed systems like this, and the cost, if you're drilling 100,000 meters of core a year, these things just make absolute sense. If you're drilling 2,000, they don't, and that's the challenge I see, is how you can get that into the next level of explorer, so that they can say, okay, I can save so much time on geologists or field assistants or whatever, that I'm willing to wear that extra cost of this additional this unit. I think that's the challenge, and you touched on it earlier, is how you can convince the target audience to give up the geologist or the field assistant when that's all we know. And I think that's a real challenge, but it's not insurmountable.
Excellent.
Can I just answer? Is that so we recognise that. So obviously the instrumentation was designed for larger programs, I guess. So you're talking about sort of 30,000 meters per annum plus. But we recognise that in terms of your juniors and the explorers, that they don't have that amount of core to log in the year. So we've actually put an instrument into a van, and we actually go around on site and can image thousands of meters. So that's our solution, because we heard a lot of our juniors just don't have the core there to put an instrument and leave it there for a whole year. So that's how we're getting around it. We're actually traveling around to the different sites and imaging that core for them.
Okay. Good job. All right, look, we expected the conversation to last for about 60 minutes. We're a little bit over time for our first episode, but rightly so. We've had some fantastic METS companies presenting today, and Cameron, I think, you know, you agree with that. And as I said, you know, between Cameron's team and the Mining Plus team, the 5 METS companies were selected for this episode. So well done to each of you, each presenting a fantastic solution to help industry. Bruce, thank you so much for your time, and I guess good luck with everything that's going on at Chalice, and hopefully whether it's, you know, Robbie's particular solution or otherwise, Aaron's there that can help you at different stages. I'm sure they both be keen to do so, but otherwise good luck with that. And obviously from the IMARC team, we thank everyone for taking part, especially obviously the Victorian government and their support, and Mining Plus. Ben, thank you for your questions. And we'd love to have everyone on next month for a different episode, which is around the topic of resourcing and processing. So anyone who does have solutions around that, then we'd be happy to have you guys on an episode, as long as it's qualified by the Mining Plus and the Victorian government team as well. So thank you again, and hopefully everyone enjoyed their first episode, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.